Here at St. Apgar's and via Zoom. My name is Steve Batalden, former director of the Malikian Center at Arizona State University. And it's a pleasure to be able to introduce the first of, actually second now, of visiting scholars that are with us from Yerevan State University. This evening, we're pleased to have this group, by the way, from Yerevan State University, is here as part of a United States Embassy grant from U.S. Embassy in Yerevan, the design of which is to develop an American Studies Center with its own degree program at Yerevan State University. So we have 6 visiting scholars, and one of them is with us this evening to talk about political parties and transition in post-Soviet Armenia. And it's with great pleasure that I introduce Gor Petrosyan. Gor has been a lecturer in political science at the Yerevan State University in the Faculty of International Relations. It is in that Faculty of International Relations where the American Studies program is being lodged. And he is with us as to develop 2 syllabi for that program on American politics and one on American society. So it's a pleasure to turn the microphone over to Gor Petrosyan and look forward to your remarks this evening.
Thank you, Professor Batalden. Good evening, everyone. And thank you also, Father Zakaya, for organizing tonight's our evening. And it's my pleasure to be here tonight with you. And I would like to be short. I know that you are promised that I will talk about from 20 to 30 minutes, and then I will be pleased and I will try to leave as much time for more discussion as it will be possible. So as already Professor Batalden mentioned in his introduction, today's our talk will be mostly discussion will be actually about the transformation of the party system in Armenia, which is quite interesting. I know that part of you are aware of the politics in Armenia, and for some other part, it's quite difficult to understand. So there needs to be something to compare with what is Armenia, what is Armenian politics, and to compare with something else. The something else will be the post-Soviet space, actually. So I will start my speech from introducing what we have in post-Soviet space. We have 15 states. And politically, I would divide this space into 3 zones. One is considered to be democratic, with established political party system, with parties that have mechanisms to interact. So when we say political party system, it doesn't mean just that there are some parties and they exist. No. Party system means that there are interrelations among the parties, that those parties can tolerate each other, that these parties can have different views to the world, different views to the politics, but still they have a mechanism to work with. So in post-Soviet space, we have this kind of party system established in 3 countries, in Baltic countries, in Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. And those are called to be democratic countries. Yeah. The second part is considered of more authoritarian systems, which has also kind of party system, but this is mostly one party system. So there is mostly one ruling leader, strong leader. He has a political basis with his party, and the rest, they are just his clients. Mostly, yes. So whatever parties they are in their parliaments, they have mostly patron-client relationships. If they have, they are different, of course. We have Turkmenistan on one hand, we have Azerbaijan on another hand, we have Russia on another hand. So they are way different. The third part of post-Soviet space is structured by mixed regime countries, which are, for example, Armenia, Georgia, Ukraine, and Kyrgyzstan. So those 4 countries have different direction of political system. And in these countries, the systems are more or less closer to each other. So they are different parties, they do exist, they are not strong, they don't have established internal relations. For instance, in Georgia, we are looking during the last years, there are clashes between the parties, and the same was in Armenia, actually. Sometimes we see that the parties are antagonistic towards each other. And today now we will speak mostly about Armenia, how we come to this, and what current trends are, and what is happening nowadays in Armenia. So initially, when Armenia received its independence, as you know, there was kind of a rivalry between the communists initially after 1990s elections, between communists and the intellectuals which were coming from the Karabakh committee. Yes, and these were mostly young professors, young doctors of sciences, and in this competition, the Karabakh committee that organized for the pan-Armenian national movement, which became a party, and it was quite strong party and won the elections in 1990, it kind of has eaten the communists. So all mostly the communists, more than 130 members of the parliament, which was established in 1990, they were communists, and then they transformed and they left the Communist Party. So the Communist Party in Armenia, it was almost destroyed and it was gone because the national agenda was leading by other forces and the society was demanding other forces. So this was the Pan-Armenian national movement, which later on split it into two directions in already 1991, as you know. Then President Petrosyan stayed as the leader of Pan-Armenian national movement, and his political team, they gained the power. And the second part was the opposition, which went to the hands of Vazgen Manukyan, who was the leader actually during the last movement in Armenia in the spring of this year, anti-government movement. So then he was he became later also the prime minister of Armenia, and he established actually the National Democratic Party of Armenia. And there was interaction, there was hope still that this system will work. So there were two leaders. One was Levon Petrosyan, another one was Vazgen Manukyan, and everyone was hoping that this system will work. But suddenly in 1995 and in 1996, this didn't work. So now I will transform to Estonia, for example, because the situation there was quite similar. They also were trying to push out the communists from the system. They had different problem because there was ethnical problem. So the communists were mostly ethnical Russians, and they chose another way. So basically, they didn't provide reduce ethnic Russian citizenship, and then the Communist Party went out of the political space. And then initially already from their National Front movement, they started to split. And the unfortunate of the Armenia, I think, in here was mostly first of all in political will, and secondly in the political system itself. The Estonians, what was the difference? Why they succeeded? First of all, they were closer to European Union. So there was a foreign force, and also to Finland, there was a foreign force that was forcing them to tolerate each other. The second reason was the institutional one. They had a parliamentary country. So, and we, back at that time, if we remember, in 1995, we had a presidential country. So the winner was taking it all and the loser was suffering. And this system continued and until our days, basically, also. The third part was also the Karabakh movement and the First Karabakh War, because during the war, we had a victory, and then we didn't have a professional army back at the time. They were volunteers, they were warlords who were fighting, and then once they were back, the state didn't have enough sources to provide them, to give them back what they deserved, and and vice versa. They started to involve them in politics. This was an issue in the United States as well, in every country, because whenever you are winning a war, you need to give back something to your soldiers, to your warlords. And it was quite similar situation in US, where everything was much more institutionalized, by the way. In case of Armenia, there were several reasons. One of them I already mentioned. So it was the system itself, why we didn't have the culture of establishing let's say, multi-party system in which the parties would tolerate and work with each other. So in 1995, 1996 elections, in 1995 particularly, all the warlords were included into the politics, and Armenian parliament that was in 1990s, the Armenian parliament, in Armenian parliament, we had more than 30% of doctors of sciences. Now in 1995, it has transformed. It has transformed, and the warlords were included into the politics. And in 1996, there was the presidential election, and the opposition didn't accept its results. And then there was this fight between the sides. And then the winner took it all, and the loser just slowly started to left the politics. Then, as in all post-Soviet countries, at the end of 1990s, we had this feeling, national feeling, when people started to miss the old political system, the Soviet system, by the way. It was because of the economic dissatisfaction, and then another old rising star became famous in Armenia. It was the current Petrosyan, who once was the head of the communist Armenia as well, and Vazgen Sargsyan, who was the head of the Yerkrapa, who was the head back at that time of Republican Party, who had all this support of all those warlords. They made a coalition actually once in 1999, and second time Armenia got its chance when there was opportunity to make a political system working, because it seemed to be two antagonistic powers, two antagonistic political parties, and suddenly they made a coalition, and there was a hope that it will succeed. But suddenly there was this terror in 1999, and the leaders were killed. And afterwards, what we had in Armenia, it was a kind of clientelistic system. So the leader of the country was trying to have all the power on his hands. So he was establishing a kind of clientelistic model of the parties. So they were kind of parties, what we can call party. It's another issue, of course, but those parties, they had they were loyal to the leader, let's say, and those ones who were those parties that were kind of antagonistic towards them, who were representatives of the opposition, they were pushed away, kind of, because the resources, the financial resources, human resources, were not so much available for them, and the political system was kind of starting, especially from 2008. We had a political system which is called one-half party political system, when you have a full one party which is ruling, and then you have kind of half party that is in opposition, but it doesn't have real opportunity to take the power, to change the power. So it was always kind of antagonistic towards the existing establishment. And then what we had in 2018 was also the response to this, and it has changed a lot. So now we see another transformation of the Armenian party system. We are seeing that nowadays the system which existed for more than 10 years in Armenia, this one-half party system, it was destroyed. The clientelistic way of the party system which existed and under the Republican Party, it suddenly was gone, because on what was based the rule of the party. By the way, this doesn't mean that it was bad or good. There are many countries that are ruled in this way. You have also this support by, for example, huge business in the United States, but still you have a small business who is strong on its way and it supports another party. I'm not talking about bad or good. I'm talking about the facts that were there. Now about Armenia. we have less resources back there in Armenia. So whenever you have a power and you have the big business loyal to you, and you are trying to use this business, you will succeed. Some reasons also that had their influence on not institutionalization of the parties and not were kind of making impossible to not only the party system but the making of the parties itself. It's there are different factors. One of this is the absence of political tradition in Armenia. Well, now those who live in diaspora, they may ask, okay, but we have parties in Chekyas, Dashnaktutu, which is more than 100 years old. It's true, of course, but in Armenia, they are not powerful. Speaking about Dashnaktutu, we have a huge crisis of elite because the elite of the Dashnaktutu, it doesn't have authority there. They don't have people whom with they can replace even. So they failed to overcome even the threshold, the electoral threshold during 2018 snap elections. And nowadays, also, I believe they would fail it if they were not in an alliance with the second president. Hanchakians, they are too weak in Armenia. They almost don't exist, let's say, as a political party, not as a group, but as a real party which has roots in the society, which has small committees, which can mobilize the country and the party. And one of the bad things in Armenia, another bad thing that makes impossible to institutionalize the parties is almost the absence of or the too vagueness of the social cleavages in the country. Because, I mean, social groups that are divided by their profession, that have their unions, that have their own interests. So more or less you have a vague mass of people who think differently or similarly, and it's quite difficult for them. The third, and of course, economy as well, because you don't have many jobs there. You don't have many unions. And this is another long talk. Why don't we have unions? And another important reason is that the parties themselves, they don't have too much space to move from one in foreign policy, let's say. All the political parties in Armenian parliament, they have the same doctrines of foreign policy. After the defeat in Second Nagorno-Karabakh war, we have seen almost all the parties saying the same thing. And those who have different prospects, who see differently the future, they are in minority, they are 1%. All of them see the same way that, okay, we need to continue our policy in alliance with Russia and cooperating with Western countries as well, or what we called the foreign policy of complementarism. Yeah? We can complement, we can buy from Russian security because they are selling security. We will buy from the West good education because they can give us good education or medical system, good health care system, and etc. So all the parties are saying the same. The only difference is that one party is saying that I will do exactly the same thing better than they will do. So we don't have this difference as people have in US, for example. Yes, in healthcare system, for instance, every party is saying the same. And this leads also to another thing, that the politics becomes too personalized. Because when you don't have ideas to fight, you are starting to fight with the persons and personalities. This is another obstacle of making impossible the institutionalization of the parties, at least on this level. But there is still good news for us, because whatever we have seen after the Second Karabakh War, this huge political crisis that we were able actually to overcome, the results of the elections were accepted by all parties that are now in parliament. But or it would be better actually to call them not parties, but by political forces, because as parties, they don't exist in the academic level of parties. What we mean when they have different ideologies, different worldviews, when they have a structure of parties, because parties in Armenia, they are mostly, well, there was famous political scientist or social scientist, Maurice Duverger. He was calling them in Russian, the term is kamarylki, I don't know its English version. So those are the parties or political parties that are kind of collected next to one person, one or several persons. So they form an interest group, and this interest group is performed as a party, but it doesn't have all the features that usually political party has. Nevertheless, we have seen that all these political forces that were seeming to be quite antagonistic towards each other, that they were seem to ready to not to tolerate each other. They do tolerate each other. Nowadays, they are sitting in the same parliament. They are debating. Sometimes they are slashing each other, but still they are sitting in one building and they are negotiating. So there is a hope that it will work. Maybe in future we will have another snap election, who knows? But still, this is a way towards which we are going. And the fact that we have two neighbors that are always ready to start a war against us makes them to tolerate each other always. But still, there in Armenia we have also nowadays changes, and those are institutional changes that I think will make bottom-up political changes and will construct parties bottom up. What we had during the last 30 years in Armenia, it was, for example, about communities. We had small communities, villages, consisted of 500 persons, in which the head of the community was not changing for last 30 years. Now we are changing, the law at the electoral codex has been changed, and instead of having the majoritarian way of voting, we will have a pluralistic way, which means that the parties will make their list, and then people will not vote for one person, but they will vote for party. And also they are making the internal construction of the country. So they are making bigger communities, which means that the role of the personality will slowly start to reduce. Because whenever you have 500 person voting in a village, the one who has more relatives, he will win. And it doesn't matter how productive he is ruling the village. So this is also changing at its, and in society, there is need and demand from the bottom, which is coming from the society for competence nowadays. So the parties are trying to satisfy this need and this demand as well. And everyone actually understands this need for unity and tolerance, which gives a hope that it will be institutionalized one day. But nevertheless, this still it has a long way to go to institutionalize party, to create ideologies, to collect people who have this ideology, who share this ideology, and didn't come to this or that party just by the chance, that as we had, for example, after 2018 elections, because what they are calling the raids who are just running out of the sheep when it starts to sink. We had it in 2018, when from the ruling party, many members of it started to run, and then they joined the new party which came to power, and then they started to run from it, and this will take some more time until a generation passes. So, as for example, in US, for some people, being a Democrat or being a Republican, this goes from the fathers to the sons, from the grandfathers to their grandsons, and being it means not just to be a member of a party, but it's kind of becoming part of their identity as well. And we don't have it yet in Armenia. Well, partly we can say that we have it partially for the members of the National Action Party, but it wasn't there back in Soviet times. Now they are up 2 generations, let's say, but just in some villages. So this is not widespread. It's not in entire Armenia. Well, so this was the kind of short introduction that I would like to make, and I'm open to your questions, and I'm open to the questions from Zoom. You can ask either about the parties or about the politics, foreign or internal. I would love to discuss it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gore. And those of you who are listening, we're open to their questions on Zoom. Let me just, if I might begin, this is a very interesting and helpful overview. I'm struck as an American by the comment that all the parties accepted the results of the June 2020 election. We're struggling with that issue here in the United States, as you know, that sometimes parties don't always accept the results of elections. Yeah. But if I might, could you guide us a little bit about 2020? I think there were many who thought that Pashinyan would not survive the June 2020 election, and yet he did. And I'm wondering if you could guide us a bit on how to understand the results of the 2020 election. And exactly how it broke, you know, I don't know the exact percentages, but I mean what the relative strength of the parties were, and how to explain it.
I would say that his success was the result of the absence of the competent opposition, let's say, because those political forces that nowadays are in parliament, except of Pashinyan's force, well, Pashinyan gathered 53.7, as far as I remember. Robert Koicharan's, the second president's force, was on the second place with 21 or 20% of the votes, and that's on the third place was the union led by Serge Sargsyan, the third president and the head of the ex-head of National Security Service, who was once the Nicole Pashinyan's teammate in his government, Artur Vanetsyan. And by the way, this third party, they didn't manage to overcome the electoral threshold. But in the constitution, we have a rule that at least 3 parties need to be in the parliament. So that was the reason why this the union led by Artur Vanetsyan, informally by Serge Sargsyan as well, is in parliament nowadays because they didn't overcome the threshold. They gathered 5.7%, and for unions we have a threshold 7%. Still, they are there. Coming back to your second question, I would say because the elections themselves, they became not the fight for the future, but they still remain the fight between the present and the past, let's say, how we have in Armenia. It's quite naively saying that the society is divided nowadays. So between black and white. So this was official discourse in Armenia, and it was leading discourse in Armenia starting from 2018, when current mayor of Yerevan city, back in his speech, mentioned that we are white and we are fighting against the black or the past, or these people, these oligarchs and these corrupted people, and etc. So we are fighting against them. So the main narrative, the main discourses are divided in this way, that there is the fight between past and present, but no one was trying to speak about the future. Also, the official lozung of the Nicole Pashinyan's party was "There is future." This was his official lozung. But I mean, the discourses, the debates, they were mostly about the past. about the loss of Nagorno-Karabakh war. What were doing the oppositioners? They were saying that it was because of you that we have lost the war. You brought the war. You didn't manage to use that diplomacy properly, so you failed the negotiations. And this is the reason why the Azerbaijan has attacked us. How was Nikol Pashinyan was trying to, and his party were trying to defend themselves? They were saying that it's your fault because during 20 years of past, you didn't manage to build an army that would be capable to defend itself. So your enemy was aware about it, and this is the reason why it has attacked. Maybe both of them are right, but still, that third choice was absent. The social statistics was before the elections that it was showing that Nikol Pashinyan was leading, his force was leading, but it wasn't 54%, it was less. So I think there was this last moment choice factor as well for many people that they decided to vote for Pashinyan because he was in power not too long, for 2 years, and people were still, many people were still kind of having hope that he will be able to change something, or they hated much more the opposition than they loved the Pashinyan. So it was mostly the absence of alternative that kept him in power, let's say. And but another thing also was quite interesting because the second social polls were showing that the second president's image was too low actually in Armenia, the Robert Kocheryan's. Before, in February, the poll conducted by International Republican Institute, which is an American institute, it showed that he had only 2% of legitimacy in Armenian society. And just during the 4 months after February, that was even after the war, his support has grown until 21%. Which was good result. It was quite good result for him too. And the main thing towards which he was pushing his campaign, it was his personal competency and his personal his biography that he had, that he was a leader of Nagorno-Karabakh during the war, that Armenia had a significant economic development during 2000s, and he was trying to build his image on this. And in opposite to this, he was trying, well, for example, about the Republican Party, it was trying to push that the current prime minister and his team, they are traitors. Robert Kocheryan was doing in a different way. He was pushing the agenda that maybe they are not traitors, but they cannot rule the country because they are incapable people. And I am the one who has the capabilities to do this. I have the team. So it was quite interesting, actually. But still, coming back to the parties, this is worth to mention that neither about Robert Kocheryan nor Serge Sargsyan nowadays, they don't have powerful parties back in Armenia, because Robert Kocheryan was leading the Armenia Union, and this union now is in parliament, but it was consisting of, it wasn't just one party. There were two parties. One of them was Dashna Petrosyan. Second was the how's it called? Reborning Armenia, and there were also some personalities who are just loyal to the second president. So they have a long way to go still to make a union or to make a party that will be workable with their system. And another one, the Serge Sargsyan's union or Artur Vanetsan's unions as well. They have several Republicans in the parliament nowadays, and they have several members of this Fatherland Party, which is not a real party. It is a group of people. Some of them are intellectuals, some of them were in political posts in the past, but still it is a group of people, and small group of people. So they don't have established party system themselves. And so they have a long way to go to form parties. and then to form party system to tolerate each other, to develop mechanisms that whenever there is a power shift and one party is leaving the power, it will still remain in the system. Because the misfortune of the Armenian political system and party system was that the political party or the leader who was losing the power, his political party was just diminishing from the political area. It happened in 1999 when the Pan-Armenian National Movement lost its fight with the back then with Robert Kocheryan, let's say. And then the same happened in 2008 with the Levontar Petrosyan, who didn't manage to stay in the system. And the same happened in 2018 with Republican Party of Armenia. So the party which is losing power, it is not becoming a constructive position, but it is kind of becoming a minority, and they are losing their party. So this is towards what we need to go, and only then you can say that we have a democratic tradition, because the party which is coming to power and the other one which is leaving, it is still in the system. They are not killing politically, not killing each other, but they are tolerating each other.
We have a question from our Zoomers. Yes.
We have a question from the audience. How knowledgeable or informed is the average Armenian citizen of the political system, and is it taught in schools in Armenia?
Well, I think this is not the advantage of Armenia, the second part of your question, that in schools and Armenian society, it is quite politicized society, let's say. But when we are speaking academically, when we are speaking about academic awareness and political awareness, not really. Because the misinformation that is spread through the media nowadays, it misleads also the people. And we don't have established good media itself or social media. We have pluralistic system. There is pluralism, there is freedom of speech, but this freedom, this pluralism, it is not very well organized. And now it is also, it goes also this social, this freedom, this pluralism, it also goes in parallel with the social media, where you don't have the traditional way of making news. As when you have an editor, this editor looks into the news, whether this is a professionally written or unprofessionally written, ideologically or not ideologically. Because nowadays you can have a blogger and he's making some sensation, and this sensation is spread over the country and it leads to public opinion. The second part of the question, I appreciate it is connected, of course, with this issue that starting from the schools, we need to educate the children to be politically educated. And this is something that we don't really have it. The children in Armenia, they are politicized, as we have seen in 2018 during the mass protest actions, because initially there were a lot of children on the streets, 15, 16 years old, not all the students, the children, the school pupils, and they were on the streets. And this is another challenge nowadays for Armenia, to educate the generation. And this challenge is even strengthened when you have not controlled media system. And social media in this term is it's making harm, but it's another chance also, because the children who have this plurality, you see one news, another news, and they read a lot, they have more time to develop political skills and capabilities themselves. What I have seen based on my personal experience after the revolution, actually, which was not satisfying me, it was the dissatisfaction of the students. Many of my students, they went out during the revolution time to the streets, and then once they are back nowadays to the universities, they have the apathy, political apathy, because they believed in the future, they believed in what they are doing, and now they have seen that, okay, we made a revolution, but the life of Armenia didn't become better from that. nowadays at least. And this is another thing for concerns actually, because the apathy is even more dangerous than political activism of these students. So better education is necessity for them, neither for going out to the streets, closing the streets for every reason, whatever they have, nor that they would become apathical towards their country and towards the politics of their country.
Other questions, comments? David, yes.
Kind of follow up on that. If the figures I'm seeing is correct, the voter turnout was about 50%. And the newly elected ruling party won about 50% of the vote. Half of 50% is 25.
Yeah.
Is there an idea of that other 75%? Half of them didn't, that other 25% that voted didn't vote for the ruling party, or sometimes, as I think was mentioned, you're not voting for somebody, you're voting against, or you don't really like who it is. But what's the sense of how are the other 75% being represented? And how good is the polling?
Okay, yeah.
That's all part of that being.
I will start from the philosophical part, then I will go to practical part, because
Did the question get heard on the Zoom?
microphone.
Okay.
I will start from the philosophical part of the question then, because in US you have 68% turnout, which is one of the highest during the last decades. Then, okay, you can say Joe Biden is not legitimate or legal, because still there is 32% who didn't vote for him. But this is the rule which we have. How fair it is, this is another issue, of course. But coming back to the sociology, to the polls, and to whom they will. So this is quite difficult question about Armenia, because first of all, we have a migration issue. So you don't know how many % of the people who are registered as voters were there personally during the elections. Second, coming back to the polling, the sociology in Armenia is good. We are not close even to Turkey or to Azerbaijan in these terms, where you don't have a clear sociology, you cannot understand because of the regime type. In Armenia, we have professional 2-3 companies who are making good. But they have another difficulty nowadays. It's COVID. They cannot conduct in-person sociological polls. They are calling. So this is making it more inconvenient, and the outcome, the results are shaping a bit. And usually during the sociological polls, we are having 50% responses. Nowadays, before the elections, they conducted 2-3, they had only 25% of responses. I remember partially how they were. It was about 28-32% for Pashinyan. And also his anti-rating as well, it was quite high, about 20%. And for Robert Kocharian, it was somewhere 10%. And his anti-rating was again very higher. So yeah, it's quite difficult to know. And also the COVID was the reason that people didn't went to polling stations. Another reason, it was the change also of the electoral system. Look, in the past, we had a mixed electoral system in Armenia before these elections, before 2020 elections. So it was called actually pluralistic, the pluralist way of elections, but still there we had 41 electoral districts from where we had the representatives. So whenever you have a person who is from this district, and it's not one person, just you have 20 persons who are competing in this area. Each of them is trying to use his resources at best to bring more people to the polling station. During this election, there was just a pluralistic way of the elections. So there was just the party. There were no names. So the people, they were not doing their best to bring their supporters to the polling station. This is another case as well. And yes, in my speech, I actually forgot to mention about this one of the key parts. It's the electoral code of the making political party system. What makes the Westminster or two-party system is the majoritarian one, way of voting. Whenever you have a because then you have winner and the loser in the district, and when you have one winner, you have another one who is trying to compete, and more people are voting for him. So they are not dividing their votes for someone who would just receive 7% or 10%. It's useless to vote for a person who would receive 7% of the votes. So what now we have in Armenia is pluralistic way, and thanks to this, also the Republican Party get to parliament. And this is another hope. Nowadays, there are many parties that are just burning in Armenia. We can see, like, I have many friends who established parties, and sometimes you think it's useless, but still, this is kind of small seeds, and in the future they will get there. They will connect to each other. And nowadays, what I'm seeing, we have local municipal elections in Armenia, and in my hometown. We had a mayor who was in power about 15 years. And now on Facebook, I'm seeing questions in the group of this town. Is there someone who is not running during the elections? So they are small unions, local parties who are establishing themselves, and they are trying to get into politics. It will take tens of years until we will make a system. But I see some seeds at least. This depends also on the future of Armenia, how it will develop.
Anything over there? Is there
Do you have any questions?
questions?
Good.
What differentiates the political parties in Armenia? How does an average Armenian pick one party to support if policies between the parties are largely the same?
It's the issue about which we were speaking. It's quite difficult to say. Sometimes some people just start saying, I like this guy's tie, for example. He is looking good. But it depends on which time we are. If this is a force majeure situation, as we had now in 2020, 2021, during snap elections, it was more kind of hate towards another one than towards support for this one, the particular one. There are different ways. There are burning social cleavages as well that we can see. For example, the rural population nowadays supports more Pashinyan's, Nikol Pashinyan's or current prime minister's party because of two reasons. First of all, he himself is in his political career, in the discourses and narratives which he is pushing, he is trying to show himself as a representative of the neglected people who were neglected for the tens of years. Secondly, there is also a practical part because there was a mass construction of the roads, of the infrastructures in the regions of Armenia, and schools and kindergartens. And nowadays we have established also quite effective banking system who are giving loans to the villagers who are making intensive gardening, and etc. So all of this in a nutshell are making current prime minister's political force more and more popular inside of the rural areas. Second part, we had what we call rural intelligentsia, the teachers of the regions and etc. In the past, they were voting always for opposition mostly. After revolution, they were voting, for example, for more or less for Bright Armenia party. In these elections, I doubt, because this was force majeure situation. There is no sociology. So what you can see, it's just the qualitative data that you need to obtain yourself. Then we have, of course, Yerevanian intelligentsia. This is kind of more or less closer to anti-Trump movement in US, because these are university professors established and who are part of establishment, and the establishment which was anti-Pashinyan, because he was kind of anti-establishment person himself in these terms. The social agenda of Pashinyan, it was quite close to the Donald Trump's social agenda, not his ideological part, I mean, but his social part, because I'm going to do my best for the people, and etc. This power of people, and people liked it. And for example, the Yerevanian intelligentsia know, because he was someone foreign for them. So during these elections, the Pashinyan, his lowest support was in the city center of Yerevan, where the the wealthiest people live, first of all, and all the intelligentsia as well. So those are three cleavages, most about which we can say, and also it depends on the personal taste. Someone likes Pashinyan's beard, someone doesn't. Someone likes Kocheryan's support shape, someone doesn't. So you have it also in US as well. But three main dimensions, trends that we have is this. And also, I see this bottom-up coming institutionalization nowadays, because the farmers, when they will have more income, they will start to have their own way of doing politics, as you have in Iowa, for example, yes, farmer unions and etc. But this is quite difficult issue, because in Armenia, in Soviet times, we had these unions, sovkhoz and etc., which was not effective at all. And people, not only in Armenia, but in the entire post-Soviet space, except of perhaps Belarus, they hate these farmer unions and etc., because they still have this old generation, it has this association with Soviet traditions. So I believe that whenever generation changes, this will come into its place as well. And then one of the most important parts, it was the social center of Yerevan, let's say, the students, the active NGOs and etc., who were making revolution in 2018. During last elections, we have seen them totally apathetic towards politics at all. They were skipping. I personally was taking part because it's part of my profession, almost in all public gatherings on both parts. So I was going, we had times when we had two parallel mass meetings in two squares. On Republican Square, it was Pashinyan's. On the Opera Square or Freedom Square, we had Robert Kocheryan's supporters or anti-Pashinyan supporters. I was going there, so those places, because it was quite interesting for me. And the way you are seeing how they are dressed, how they are speaking. Republican Square, where we had Pashinyan supporters, it were mostly rural people and people from the outskirts of the Yerevan. In parallel, in Freedom Square, wherever you were going, you could see these nicely dressed people with quite expensive dresses and etc. So you could see that this is the center of Yerevan, the wealthy people and the people from the establishment. And another problem why we had a snap election, it was not just because of the opposition, but it was because of the state apparatus. Because the state apparatus, after the Karabakh war, it started to fall apart. The people in the state apparatus, they were resigning all the time, where they were not ready to work with the government. So this was another part. So he has re-legitimated himself, and now they are more or less loyal to him again. Do we have any other question?
If I may just continue something you just mentioned earlier that interested me. You talked about parties out of power losing their source of support. Perhaps those who were in power being able to use their power to their own party's advantage. Is that a function of some measure of corruption still in the system, that those in power are able to ex- uh, distribute spoils? Or
It
is that what is the dynamic, or is it just the early gestation period for parties generally?
it was changing during the time. For example, in the beginning of 2000s, in the middle of 2000s, we had those people who had the public wealth gathered in their hands, let's say 20, 30 families, and they were all loyal to the political power and the people who were in power. And then it has started to more liberalize, let's say. So already closer to revolution time, it was not such that all the wealthy people are in the Republican Party, not so much, or not. So this clientelistic model, it was switching, it was changing during the time, and now as well. It's not an obligation. If you are a wealthy, you need to be loyal to a political party or something. It was changing, but still, back until 2018, it was part of it because there were people who were wealthy, who were able to gather money for the party. And once you are losing your party, you are losing the money source, basically. You are losing your party. But I don't think that this was the case for the money was the only case for Republican Party, because in Republican Party, they still had people who were loyal to them, who were wealthy, and remained loyal to them after even defeat in 2018. This wasn't the only reason. It was not just about the money. It was that the people who are in power for too long, and those who don't have real opposition, they are building their castle on a sand. So they were trying kind of to continue the Soviet politics of including new personnel, and these were the persons who were trying to make their career.
Sure.
They were not loyal to the party, but they were loyal to the power. So the power changes. This is an opportunity.
Patron-client.
Indeed, but this is an opportunity for them to make a better career during this time, actually. So you are a head of staff somewhere, you can become a head of department because this is opportunity for them. The new power, they may fire this person. So a lot of Republicans, members of the Republican Party, they just left the party. Some of them rejoined the new government. Some of them tried to join, they were refused. And so, yeah.
So it's not corruption so much as patronage.
Yeah. No, it was not just the case of corruption. This was more, let's say, ineffective governance that led to 2018's Armenia's revolution, and the tiredness of the people from Sargsyan's personality as well, because he has promised to leave.
Yeah.
He has promised to leave and to change the constitution. Just 1 year before 2018's revolution, we had parliamentarian elections, and its results were accepted by current prime minister, who then led the revolution. And because people voted for Republican Party even. And yeah.
I interrupted a question from our Zoomers.
We have another one. Which political party has the best plan for long-term survival of Armenia?
No, all of them and none of them, actually, because whenever you are looking into the ideologies of the parties, whenever you are talking to the party politicians in Armenia, all of them have more or less similar views, similar plans. And in reality, they are trying to be similar quite. This is what I have mentioned, actually. They are not fighting each other's ideas, they are fighting each other. And once, coming back to this question, actually, once I had a meeting with one of the leaders of, can I say, yeah, it was Dashnaktion party, and it was many years ago. And then I asked him, okay, what's the aim? What is the ideology? What are you going to do in Armenia? And then he told, well, first of all, we will establish the comrade society. And that's okay. Because in Dashnaktun's agenda, it's absent. In real political agenda, what they have, it's not there. And then he mentioned that to re-establish Armenia from sea to sea, and I asked from which sea to what sea, and he told me, we will think about it, we will decide it in future. So this also speaks that the real politics and what they write in their papers nicely, they are quite different. And sometimes they are writing, just copying and pasting their the same idea, the same promises and etc. During these elections as well. It was you are reading there. You are a scientist who is trying to find the differences, and you have more or less the same. We have a couple of groups which call themselves parties, and they are radicals mostly. So only their ideology is kind of different, differentiating. Okay, we will leave Russia, and US will provide this as we support. They will protect us. Or I don't know whether from Arizona they will bring some navy to protect Armenia or something. But I mean, it is not taken serious at all. Neither here, I mean, nor in Armenia as well, because more or less everyone understands the situation, everyone understands the challenges that we have and the solutions as well. Yeah.
We have time for one last kind of question. We have one from the audience here,
Sure.
please.
How would you describe or assess the influence from outside of Armenia on Armenian politics, from the diaspora as well as from other countries?
I would say from diaspora, nowadays we don't have huge impact on internal politics. It was in 2008, for example, when there was this case with opening of the border. It was in Dashnakhtun back at that time. It was quite more stronger in Armenia than now it is. And also the discourses from diaspora, they were stronger, but I think with the time, we are becoming more detached. But this is another issue, what we mean when we are saying diaspora. Usually when we are saying diaspora in Armenia, we are understanding American diaspora or Middle Eastern diaspora. Nowadays, it's Russian diaspora. It's becoming more and more influential in Armenia. Samuel Karapetyan, whom you probably know, who is a multi-billionaire in Russia. He has started now a program. He promised to invest 800 millions. He obtains a lot of infrastructures in Armenia, and he's quite influential there. And he will be more influential politically soon. American diaspora, we don't see its influence in Armenia nowadays. Perhaps Syrian diaspora, which is already not a diaspora, but it's part of Armenian society. It also, but politically, it's not visible at all. And coming back to quite interesting question, how the foreign powers are influencing internal politics, I would say that number one influencer of Armenian politics nowadays is Azerbaijan, because whatever they were doing during the May entirely, they aimed to have internal political impacts on Armenia, coming in front towards Armenian territory 1, 2, 3 kilometers, and they were trying to make as much noise in Armenia as possible to make Armenian elections not constructive, and they were succeeding. It was visible that they were succeeding. The campaign was in hate because of these discourses. You are not capable to defend the territory. You are not this. So Azerbaijan indeed is a big influencer, and also they are influencing the foreign agenda of Armenia. Because of Azerbaijan, you need to have what you have in your foreign policy. Because if you don't have Russian flag on your border nowadays with Azerbaijan, they may shoot. Your army is weakened. Your army is broken after the war. So you don't have resources to defend yourself. And I would say this is first influencer on Armenian politics. And the rest, of course, secondly, Russia has a huge impact on Armenia's internal politics, but it doesn't want to interfere what we have seen during the last 2-3 years, even after revolution, it didn't want to interfere. Openly on the political level, we haven't seen that there was interference into Armenia's politics. So, but the Russian media, sometimes they are making some other noise because they are making other ways of politics. When it comes to European Union, United States, I would say nowadays in this force majeure situation, they have lost more and more their impact to the internal politics. They were much more influencing back before revolution, let's say, because especially European Union, it was pushing the reform agenda in Armenia, etc. So the political power, people who were in the power, they needed to take into consideration what were saying the European commissioners to Armenia. So then you will be able to receive some grants or some advantages for Armenia. Nowadays, this has more reduced because the first issue that we nowadays have, it's not just the reform, it's the security. Security is essential because the capabilities of the state, they are weakened. The society has changed, they are more apathic, and what they need now is more security, and then of course reforms as well. So the security provider, the one who sells you security, is more influential towards you as well.
Gord, just to clarify this question, when you say Azerbaijan influence in the election, how was that? Is that in the form of disinformation? Was it in Russian? How did that manifest itself actually as a part of the election?
Just imagine that you have here elections and Mexicans are starting to cross your border.
Or
Would
it's
it
not,
have
you're
an
not talking
impact?
about the media.
No, not only media. Well, about the media, this is another topic, but I mean, just entering the territory,
Yeah.
which is
Oh, okay.
recognized. So imagine that you have a Biden, Trump.
But it's not disinformation in the
No, I mean,
social media that they're introducing. I can't imagine that they would have.
that also, but this is not as influential as their soldiers are crossing towards and coming closer to your villages, saying this is our historical land, we will stay here. And just imagine the same in here. So how would it shape the result overall of the elections? Because
Intimidation.
indeed.
So thank you to all who've come tonight, and also to those who've been Zooming with us. I would just say that 2 weeks from tonight, Tigran Yepremian will be joining us for a very interesting historical talk about an Armenian influence on the Christianization of Iceland. So it's a rather unusual and interesting topic. So you're welcome to join us here at St. Apgar's or via Zoom. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gord.
My pleasure.
Very nicely done.
Yeah.